Hi, everyone. I wanted to share a quick reminder about an opportunity for healing professionals who want to deepen their work with somatic trauma-informed practices. The Trauma Center Trauma Sensitive Yoga Certification Program is our 300-hour online training that supports practitioners around the world in offering safe, embodied healing experiences grounded in decades of research and practice. Our next cohort starts in September, and applications are open until August 15th. And if you still need to complete the required 20-hour foundational training, you can join one anytime. Our facilitators offer them online and in person all year long. To learn more, start your journey with us at traumasensitiveyoga.com. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome to On Trauma and Power. I'm your host, Jenn Turner, co-founder of the Center for Trauma and Embodiment. I'm so glad you're here with us. Each episode, I sit down with different experts, educators, authors, survivors, and practitioners, sharing different trauma-informed experiences across various fields. Join us as we explore the complex intersections of trauma and power through embodied healing and diverse perspectives in both our personal and collective healing journeys. Let's dive on in. Welcome, Ayanna. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. And I imagine, even though we talk about heavy things, it will be joyful as it was when we spoke before. There's something that I really appreciate about you bringing that. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit for folks and then invite you to take the mic and lead us through some kind of centering, grounding. But to start with, Ayanna Freedom is an LICSW and a registered 500-hour yoga teacher, supporting individuals, groups, and organizations to amplify their authenticity and empower change. With years of research in restorative yoga and multiple trauma-sensitive yoga programs, Ayanna has developed a mindful, movement-based, holistic approach to wellness that releases complex trauma out of the body. Ayanna is the founder of Love and Revolution, an action-based anti-racist group, and the founder of Be Free Wellness, a nonprofit that helps marginalized communities access therapy and holistic services. She is currently a full-time clinician, supervisor, somatic healer, Reiki practitioner, and yoga teacher at Alvitas in Barnstable, Mass. Ayanna's two books, Becoming Free and Unfuck Your Stuck, The 12 Agreements to Full Body Freedom, describe her recovery journey and help others to identify and release stress by using the 12 body agreements she developed. She also co-hosts the podcast, Unfuck Your Stuck, with her daughter and co-host, Blessing. Just thanks for being here. I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, you read that well. Well done.
Thanks. You want to take it, that'd be great. And folks can just, who are listening, you can always skip past the ground if you want to get to the conversation, but if you want to listen into that, you're welcome to as well. So feel free.
Yeah, so actually I do this before I do anything else, usually. So if I am seeing clients or if I'm doing a podcast or if I'm speaking or if I'm just exchanging energy with everyone or anyone, we have to ground our bodies. Otherwise, it's just noise in the ear. And we don't want that, right? We get that all day long. So just going to invite people to, if they're comfortable, close their eyes. If not, just find like a gaze on the floor so that the stimulus from the eyes can be removed. So that's why we ask people to close their eyes. But I also want to honor people that have PTSD, that when they close their eyes, their body gets really activated. So the way that we work with that is just finding like a soft gaze and just maybe a point on the floor or a chair or anything that would just bring the eyes down so it's not taking in any stimulation. And then as we do that, we're going to drop the shoulders, drop the jaw. And then allow breath into the body in whatever way it's naturally breathing. And then the invitation here is to become aware of how the breath is being with the body today. So just become the observer. Don't start to judge it. Every time we do that, we're like, oh my God, I'm not even breathing right. What else am I good at? Let that go. Just observe how the breath is moving through the body. And as the breath kind of swirls the body, see where you might be holding any kind of tension in the moment. See if you can bring the breath there and allow the invitation to just soften that part of the body. And see if you can continue to allow the shoulders to drop as we lengthen the spine and become aware of the crown of the head. And now softly and gently invite more breath into the body. So no forcing, just allowing. Maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth, or filling up the belly or the chest. And then letting the exhale be longer than the inhale. And then just allowing the space of breath and being without expectation, but just love. And put worry and to-dos on the shelf for right now. We're just having a conversation with the universe and each other and energy and love. And now if you want, take a couple really deep breaths in together, like into the nose, out the mouth, like kind of let it all go. And you can maybe make some movements with the body, shoulders, roll the head, and then open your eyes and we can start chatting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just love.
It's just love.
Seemed pretty chaotic. Just love.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're up for it, I'd love
Yeah.
to, hear and share with everyone a bit about how you first got interested and engaged in somatic healing work for yourself, and then,
Yeah.
however you want to take that.
Sure. So for me, it was about 8 or 10 years ago. My body was pretty addicted to alcohol, and not so tender ways of taking care of myself. And that just came from history of trauma. And so when I figured out that that was sort of what was happening to me, I tried all the things like in AA or NA and all the ways in which they tell you to treat, addiction. And none of those were working for me. They just weren't resonating because what was very clear to me early on was that all that stuff lives in the heart and the body, not just in my brain and not just in my thoughts. And so once I figured that out, it made like a whole new world of difference for me. I was like, oh my God, I found my breath, I found my body, and then I just kind of like figured out how to move it in a way that wasn't horrible, awful, but brought joy and then breath. And it was a game changer. And I went to rehab twice, and I tell people this only because, it's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm actually proud of it. Like people, like every time I work with someone who's in recovery or addiction from anything, right? It's not just have to be alcohol. Like the world's addicted to their phones. Let's be clear. Like we're all
Yes.
addicted to like everything right now, right? We're even addicted to like watching the world be harmed, and we can't like not watch it. Anyway, we'll get into that later. But going to rehab was like a reset. It was like a break. And at the time, I was a mom, and like being a mom is, or a parent in the world is actually extremely hard and something else we don't talk about a lot. But I got fed. I got fed really good food. All I had to do was wake up and go to these groups. The hardest part was talking about my feelings, but that's what needed to be done. And so once I was like, oh, that's the work that needs to be done here in conjunction with my body, it wasn't as scary or painful.
Yep.
Yeah. So removing the alcohol or the addiction was like almost, that part was not the easy part. I won't say it's not easy, like for people that are like, it is really hard. But once you get that part out of the way, it's the evolution of the growth of the mind and body and how we connect that really can shift how we live our lives. And so that can be for anyone. Like I always talk about people like as a therapist, like, yeah, you're struggling from being in survival mode of hustle culture. Like your body's exhausted. It almost feels the same as addiction. It's almost the exact same. So if we look at it like that way, that all humans are really struggling with things in their body, and it's traumatic. Like living in America right now, it's like it's traumatic for the body. It's traumatic for the nervous system. So if we're going to heal folks, we can't just do this like sit across from you, talk, and not integrate other these modalities into healing. And so that's sort of how it sort of came to be for me.
Mm. Was that did it feel radical at the time, or was there like a, I don't know, an edge there where people are focusing maybe in recovery on the 12 steps or on certain things that are more about cognition and thoughts and beliefs, and you're like, but what about this other thing? Like, was it hard to find that? How did you
Yeah.
resource that yourself?
Yeah, like 10 years ago, like wasn't a thing. Somatic healing now is like the biggest buzzword, right? It's like, oh, it's like, in the trauma world, it's all about the body. It's like the big thing. Back then, like 10 years ago, it was not. And so it was like I couldn't find where that lived in the world. Like I couldn't find a center where you could just go and all those modalities were offered. And that's sort of why I started the nonprofit, because it was and my business Be Free Wellness, because it was just there wasn't a space that could move your body and do therapy like even in the same building. Like it just was like unheard of. Like you don't even never mind like a doctor. Like it's all healing. It's just like I'm not sure why in America this is so separate from like you have to drive a million places just to get for this one body, right? Like you should just go next door, like And if you talk about like community, like we gotta create these spaces in which all of these things are happening in one space, so that healing and energy can just be interchanged, and like and give a hug in between. Like that is also somatic healing. Like it's just like it's those kinds of things. That kind of stuff's been around for years, and so the work really has to go there. And so now it's not as radical. What I think people are struggling with still though is sort of like the medical model versus like the holistic model. So we have like these trauma centers that believe in embodiment, but there's still this medical world out there that is trying to treat the same thing, and they're looking in very different directions for the same thing. So that world really still needs to get integrated quite a bit more. And we got to really start to think outside the box. But particularly, I'd say for BIPOC bodies and bodies that are oppressed, because that's, I think, where we're finding a lot of the rub, and a lot of the medical model is very, very stuck in sort of the systematic white supremacy, racist ways of being. Not that trauma centers aren't, or ways of treating
Truth.
people aren't.
Yes.
It lives everywhere.
Yes.
But it's a little bit more able to be seen, I guess, in trauma centers and trauma, or talked about maybe in certain places, maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of wild when I think about my background at, a place like the trauma center. We weren't talking about systemic trauma until like maybe 10 years ago. It was like starting to be like, oh yeah, it's not just what happens in these relationships. It's this,
Right.
what about this context and community and these beliefs that we've been indoctrinated in? And it's one thing to start talking about, it's another thing to try to do things differently.
Right. Like systems just can't. They have like the craziest ways of understanding change. I never understood that. It's so entrenched. Like, and I guess I do understand it. Like, it all has to do with fear, right? It's all based in fear and power and money, right? So systems really refuse to change in relationship to all those things. And so I think that's why it makes it so hard. And also, every system is built on, the backs of people of color and the wealth gap, and women not getting paid more. And, it's like, how is the world going to survive if you actually radically change those things? Like, what does it look like? Who's actually getting paid, right? All those questions start to come up. But I think just in the therapy world, it's really difficult. So right now, which I was just looking at my caseload the other day, I have about 70% folks of color, which is amazing. And the healing and growth that happens very quickly in those spaces. And a lot of it is because we just cut out the bullshit of like, we don't have to talk about fucking white shit. Like in other words, people can really share about racial trauma without having to worry about the therapist being harmed or scared, or how is this person going to react, or are they going to then harm me in some way. So that dynamic is then removed, right? But then So those conversations are so, so different. And I'm finding that that's the work right now is like, we really got to dive into those folks are not just harmed by trauma if they're coming to me for trauma, but they've been harmed by white supremacy way before that. And so some of their issues have nothing to do with them internally. It has to do with how do we heal in your body the external trauma you've had your whole life because of racism or because of white supremacy or because of being othered, right? It's not just, I don't want to do black and white or race necessarily. It could be other folks that are just othered, right? That aren't in the norm of the paradigm of dominant culture. Any of those other bodies really have had a lifetime of harm, and the heart in particular, like that, to have that type of, I went to sorry, I'm just like going off on a tangent. I hope
Go.
that's okay.
It's
Oh,
beautiful.
I was like, wait, okay. So I went to
Please.
Kripalu this weekend, and it was so fun. It was like Lamar Rod Owens and Reggie Hubbard, and they're both just beautiful black men that do beautiful work in the world around, like, freedom and liberation and sound and all the things that you would hope for. And it was just like that kind of energy is sort of just where we need to be. And now I totally lost my thoughts. So
No, it's great. I lost mine
I
a
was
little
like,
too.
I was gonna say it for some reason, and I can't remember why. But anyway, follow those two individuals. They're incredible. The Ma has a new book out called The New Saints, and like, wow, it's just, he's talking about a high level way of being that's like incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love his writing so much.
yeah.
And we just missed each other. I was there. I left on Friday, so yeah, we just missed each other. Yeah, I was there doing a trauma sensitive yoga workshop with Dave.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, but to circle back though, everything there's so much in there, right? Like how you show up as a provider to then open the door for these conversations that can sometimes take years to dance around. Particularly because predominantly, right? Who are the therapists? Who are the providers?
Right.
And it's like the avoidance that happens, the caretaking. Also, in my experience, that sense of I don't want the system to pathologize me, and so I don't even want to bring the, do I sound paranoid? Do I sound, like what is it? And because the system has a history of pathologizing normative responses to racism, to
Right,
othering,
right.
to
Yeah,
trauma. And
exactly.
me as a provider, I am that system, right? I represent that system in my
Right,
role.
right. I often ask, white providers, like, how is it that you're talking about the harm of white supremacy in the clinical interaction, maybe even in the first session? Because if we're not having that conversation and a body of color is sitting across from a white body in this really sacred exchange, and we can't ask that question, then we're already doing harm to that individual. So I honestly don't know how BIPOC bodies are healing right now, because I just don't. There's not a lot of people of color doing, at least in Massachusetts where I am, and particularly on Cape Cod, obviously. But like, there's just such a small number of us, and again, that has to do with money, right? Like, I'm in ridiculous amounts of debt to Simmons College for getting my LICSW, right? It's like the system is put in place so that we can't even get access to education and a license, which is even crazier to me, that you have to have like all these hours of like supervised stuff, and then the test is like $300, $500, like whatever it is. It's crazy. Maybe it's not that high, but it's like it's a whole thing. And so we're creating systems in which the people of color can't even become, and then there's the wealth gap anyway. So how are you going to like feed your children and then go like it anyway? It's a whole thing.
And working in an industry that is chronically underpaid anyway, because the system devalues or doesn't value
Totally.
the services, the healing space.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, could you share more about the kind of healing that you're talking about, particularly in the BIPOC community, but in general, when you're working with bodies that have been systemically and historically, intergenerationally othered, how you
Yeah.
approach that work and
Yeah. Um, it's such tender work. And I think the idea is really to get them to understand that their internal struggle is not just because of them. And so really getting them to understand that you've had this lifetime of trauma. And on top of that, your body also integrates generational trauma. And so we have to understand like how does that land in everyone's body? And it's different for everyone, right? And so we got to sort of understand that piece and then also create the path of safety in community to freedom and liberation. So that looks like this, right? Like all healing does, like it's, sort of up and down, nothing is straightforward. But it's being able to identify those systems in which people are getting harmed constantly, right? Like I have Black women who talk about going to the hospital, and it's like we are both in tears about the experiences. It's horrific, the racism that shows up. And so, how does that land as identity in the world? How can we make sure that we're safe? And then the clear message is no one can heal alone, right? Where none of us can heal in isolation. So finding other bodies that you feel comfortable, it doesn't have to be Black and brown, but it can be. Finding other people that resonate with you and can feed back like that wasn't you, right? Like oftentimes I'll have an interaction at a job or a work or place of employment, and I'm thinking like, what the heck just happened? Like, what did I do wrong? I know, now that that's just my trauma brain, but also like, nope, that's a systems response. That has nothing to do with who I am or my identity or how I said that or how I laugh loud or I mean a lot of places have a hard time with me. I'm big. Like it's just I'm
Taking up
not
space.
quiet. I'm not quiet like about anything, whether it's injustice or joy. This is the same. They get the same response every time. That doesn't always work in every environment. In some places it does, but not every, and particularly white environments. Like they're all weirdo. Particularly yoga. Like people are so weird. I'm so
Very.
loud in yoga, and oh my god, like stop being so white. No offense. It's just so linear. Like I don't understand. Yeah, it's just very linear way of being, and I'm just like, no, we're not meant to move that way. We're not meant to be that way. Yeah, and I think it's hard for BIPOC bodies to get out of survival mode. That's my biggest struggle is like we got to make time for ourselves, and that's really hard. I mean, just out of a survival, I have to feed my children, and I can't go to Reiki or yoga. What are you talking about, Ayanna? Like that's crazy talk. I get it, but also,
How do you nudge at that? Because right, it's like yes, and there is reality, but also how do you poke at that kind of either beliefs that maybe these spaces aren't for certain people or certain bodies or there's not.
yeah. I mean, I think for people that are trying to heal, it's they're gonna show up. So it's just more so holding space for like I hate the term like when they're ready, like no one's really ready, but like when people are able to make the space. And I also talk about like when I was in recovery, I had no choice. I mean, I was looking at either death or like find healing. So for me, it was like in some way, I'm like so thankful that I had that experience because otherwise I would never have had the urgency to do this to be integrated in these ways and be able to share them with other people. Like there wouldn't be a call for like such urgency in everything of like my whole being. So I think in that way, until there's urgency, people aren't, they may not, and then like that's okay. And loving them anyway, right? And then just loving them into that and calling them in meditation and life and however that is, and they'll get to me when they can, and they will.
I'd love to hear more if you're up for sharing about your process of taking up space. I think that is such a powerful thing. It's a beautiful quality. I get to even sense being in this space with you
Yeah.
was part of sort of your relationship with your body and maybe agreements or kind of like what brought you into that space.
Yeah, I mean, that ebbs and flows for me because I feel like that's one of the hardest things. Dominant culture really it really digs itself in there. And I find this with like being a mid-age. I don't know how old I am, but anyway, there's menopause happening, and my body's changing and shifting, and so I'm finding that that is like one of the biggest things that's hard for me to like take up space with. There's nothing wrong with my body. I move my body. I eat well. I'm pretty healthy, but you know, like it's bigger than it was, and it's challenging to be like okay with that. I have days. I'm much better now, but I had days where I was just like, this is painful. This is really painful. And I had to do a lot of work around that's dominant culture thinking, Ayanna. Like, knock it the fuck off. What are you doing? It didn't make any sense, right? It's just part of growing or being, right? But somehow I was getting attached to that, like you're only good if you're like white and skinny kind of thing. And so I had to like, I was like had to remove that and continue to take up space, but it took work. And what's funny is I always talk about this is like before I went to rehab, I was like probably like I don't know, I was tiny. I was like under 100 pounds, and the amount of compliments I got
It's so
and
dark,
how
right?
great I looked and how great I was, how like I don't know, even the words were just like I'm thinking in my head, do you even know that I like am suicidal every day and I'm gonna have to go to rehab or and I'm gonna die in this body? Like this body's sick and ill. So it's wild. So now I'm like,
It's so
bring
true.
it on. That's just one example, but like it is interesting just being on Cape. Like it's different, but when I'm in rooms with people of color and then rooms with white people, it is my lap is very you can people see people react in a bad way, but more of a surprised way. And then, you know, I think about that because I see it in their face, right? And then oftentimes in workshops, people will come up and be like, "Oh my God, you were the most joyful person in the room. I loved it." But in my head, they were staring at me like I was like an alien. And I'm like, "Oh my God, oh, I find people of color joyful." Not that white people can't be, but it's different.
Of course. Of course. As it should be, right?
Yeah,
There's so much there that I love and resonate with, right? But it's like it is so fucking powerful how we can get rewarded and praised when we can be at our most like at our when we're suffering or struggling. But if we fit into that narrow box, I resonate with that so much. And you know, the appearance of being okay versus what is being okay, or what the appearance of being healthy versus what does health actually embodied health feel like, and what it looks
right.
like is very different than all of these norms. And you mentioned also the whole like, you know, white skinny yoga stuff. It's toxic and it's everywhere. And I wonder, how do you chip away at that? How do you create spaces that are welcoming to bodies that do not look like that, which honestly is most bodies, but yet still this paradigm persists?
Yeah, the yoga whiteness is just like the bane of my existence. Like it's so gross, but it's also so beautiful, right? It's how I healed. It's how I came to be who I am, like off of the addiction. When I was in the middle of yoga teacher training when I relapsed and had to go back to rehab, and so all I did was just be on my yoga mat and move my body and write and talk to myself and get the trauma out of my body. And so that's how I learned how to do all that. And that's where the two books came from. So to me, yoga is like just this raw, gorgeous thing for all bodies. In
Yeah.
Western culture, it is for white, skinny, like when I teach, even if it's not on Cape Cod, I'm usually the only person of color, never mind in the studio, but teaching in the studio. And then I'm the largest body, and I'm not even that big. Like, like average size, right? Which is wild to me. Like, it's just like, oh my God. And I'm the loudest, right? And then, but when I teach, I'm very like directive and soft. I mean, you heard me. So, like, when I did that meditation, that's how I teach yoga. It's all the same. But I will giggle and laugh in there. And people are like, open their eyes, like they're afraid to, like, should I look? Should I laugh? Like, it's like, oh my God, get out of this culture of like, yoga's not joyful for all bodies. Can we just not have that be that, right? And so we have to be ourselves if we're going to invite others to connect in that way. And so I think a lot of what I've been doing lately is designing sort of a piece of yoga teacher training for the teachers so that when they're doing their teacher trainings in their studios, we can actually have a whole session around like racial trauma, addicted bodies. What does it feel like to be like indigenous in this world? What does it feel like right now to be an immigrant? And if these folks ever enter your studio, and let's be clear, the reason they're not is money, point blank. Also culture, right? It's just not,
Yes.
but it yoga came from black and brown bodies. That's why I'm like, what do you mean culture? Like when I ask people like, why aren't we going? It's culture. It's like, no, it's just the in Western world we've taken it over to this Lululemon flashy skinny white people thing.
Yep.
It never was.
That's
It
right.
was India and all these other cultures in which people sat in the earth. They didn't have I'm like, where's the mat coming from for like $200? People sat in the earth and meditated for hours, and then somehow some movement came in which became asana. But asana came from Western world mainly, right? There are other lineages and ways in which the limbs and all that kind of the history of yoga. I don't want to go into all of it now, but like it did come from just being still in the body. So I don't know where all this like power yoga and all this like crazy business came from, which most bodies can't do.
That's right. That's right.
And it's not so now I'm yelling. It's not about like just up and down vinyasa.
Right.
Like I don't even like what is like I understand it and I am actually trained in it because at the time that's what my body needed. It needed to move fast. I needed to sweat. I needed to get all that friggin' addiction stuff from my body. But I wouldn't have survived had I not had the other pieces of it. And so the other pieces are what connect us. And I think we have to create spaces in which there's healing for bodies of color in the same room, and then white bodies in the same room, and we got to talk about racism, and then we have to have integration. But we have to have teachers that are comfortable
Yes.
being able to understand the harm of all these things. I don't know where it came from that you can just go through a 200-hour yoga teacher training, not have this extensive conversation about being othered and separate bodies and not know how to integrate them. Because otherwise, you're just holding space for white bodies. And what the fuck is that?
And able-bodied and
Right.
physically fit bodies.
Exactly. Right.
Yep.
Language in yoga studios. Like, can we just not assume people are he, she? And then they're like, oh, but they told me yesterday that they were. And I'm like, that's fluid.
Yes.
And sorry, but fuck you for not thinking that's fluid the next day. Just ask. Like, it's okay. People are allowed to be who they are within the hour, mind you. Because that's what yoga does.
Right.
If we're doing it, there's not right or wrong, right? I hate that lineage. But like also, if we're doing yoga really and holding space for all bodies, we have to allow for shift and change and presence of everyone and the fluidity of everyone. Like trans bodies.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
It's got to be, how do you not? I mean, that's a beautiful example of how to hold space for all types of things in one. But you can't or like larger bodies and language and yoga around larger bodies, because like if one other white woman tells me to lift my tummy off my thigh, it's not gonna right now.
It's not going to happen. Yep.
It's just not gonna happen. And I kind of like it. So stop saying that cue.
It's pretty fucking cozy, right?
So I do all these meditations around my menopause belly because I have to love it, right? Because it just is. So now I'm like, okay, I have all names and it's my friend, and like, come on, I'm not removing it.
You know what you strike me too when you talk about the fluidity? It's like this idea too that we're not fixed, and within us is a multiplicity or a whole universe.
Right.
And
right.
If we're in a process of self-discovery and exploration, we have to create space for that.
Right. Exactly. Right. And if we're not, but what's striking to me is that particularly white women that teach yoga haven't had that conversation with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times there's harm there within themselves that they're not looking at, conscious or unconscious.
Yes.
And that gets transferred so loudly to a room of yoga folks trying to be sacred in their bodies. It's almost more harmful in many ways.
And we don't look at that enough. What is our relationship to our body? We are going to extend that same thing to the communities we work with. And if we are critical and harsh, we push ourselves to our edge, do the advanced thing of the form. Like what are we communicating then to other bodies that are in the room? And what are we communicating about why we're even there?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yoga can
Because
be punishment, right?
sometimes people will walk out and be like, "Oh my God, that was so easy." And then some people will walk out in tears being like, "That was the most incredible class I've ever taken. We didn't even move that much." So it's just their access of being able to figure out what's actually going on there
Mm.
and what people can allow in. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about the 12 agreements that
Hmm.
it sounds incredible, and that I know the second book is about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was trying to create a framework of like how to communicate to people, because the first book was really just about my recovery story and how it happened, and it ends like right when I opened Be Free. So, but then everyone was like, "Yeah, but how did you get there? Like, I don't get it. Can you break it down?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. How do I do this in like a framework that's like structured?" Because I'm not very structured. So I was like, okay. When I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I mean, I think the 12 steps in general, like for AA and NA, are great. Like they're like a good thing to adopt for anything, right? They're great, but they're missing the pieces. I mean, there's one thing about meditation and whatever. So I was like, oh, like how did I really get to this place of healing? And for me, it was making agreements with my body about how I'm going to operate, how I'm going to honor myself in the world. And that's where that came in. So I just like picked 12, and walked people through what mine were. So I have like 12 body agreements in which like I have a little sign in my bedroom that like I pick one every day. It doesn't have to be like 1 through 12. I just pick one that I just am like, okay, that's what I'm gonna sort of honor today. And it just walks through, and there's like a template in the back of the book in which it describes how you can create your own, or people can just use mine. I mean, they're pretty simple. Like number one is like listen to your body, right? But that it sounds so simple, but
It's
oh
not.
my God, none
No.
of us do that. None of
No.
us do that. And my favorite one is about like rushing. Like I will commit to not rushing. So if we think about like every time I do a workshop on the book and I have people raise their hand, I'm like, how many times a day do you think you rush? And everyone's like, oh my God, like it's like a million, right? A million times. And I have to explain that like the body doesn't know the difference between like if you're about to get hit by a car and rushing. Like the PTSD is the same. Like the activation of the trauma response is exactly the same. So if you're in harm's way and you're rushing, the body's like, I'm in harm because that's why I'm rushing. So you like shortness of breath, you're dropping stuff, you're tripping
Yes.
over stuff, you can't catch, you're not fluid in your body. And so that's the first signal that like you're in harm. And so the body goes into survival mode. And then there you are. All you're doing is accessing that level of like movement throughout the day. Do you
I
know
could.
how damaged that's like so damaging to the body?
It's. I mean, I could cry for that. I mean, that is so true, and it's like it's re-trauma, especially if we've had those experiences that are these profound traumatic experiences.
Right.
In addition to being in that ecosystem of trauma, it's absolutely. And how do we get rewarded when we don't listen to our body also, right? And that I think to me is such a powerful paradigm. It's like it's an act of resistance to listen to your body.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, like all the wonderful rest healers right now. They're
Yes.
doing all this work like Tracy Stanley and Octavia Rahim and the Rest is Resistance book with Trisha. It's like people don't understand that that's really the resistance. Like that's the work and the liberation of all bodies, but particularly BIPOC bodies. Like
Yes.
that's how we can resist. But people are pushing it up against like, but I need to feed my kids. Like it's real. I get it. Like, what do you mean take a nap?
Right.
But I mean, I have to describe to people like, yeah, that's like But if I don't take the nap, I'm screaming at my kid. And the exchange of that energy is extremely harmful to both bodies. Yeah. Like it's happened with my kid often, right? It just is the paradigm of parenting. It's just developmental. We clash. It's hard. That's part of growing together. But I really gotta, like, my adrenaline is so out of control when I do that that I got to sit down with my kid and literally we do nothing for an hour, whatever it is, or something that's like a puzzle or coloring because I just can't. I got to bring my nervous system down, but I got to do it with her. Then I got to do it in an exchange of like, hey, this happened. And you can say sorry, but sorry is like the stupidest word to me. I fucking hate it. Like, let it go. Like, but exchange the energy differently.
Yeah.
That's the honoring of the making, not making up for, but feeling that thing that you harmed.
I think about too, though, then that also, if you're going to stop and be with your kid, you're going to stop and rest. It's like extracting yourself from the river and sitting on the side and being willing to let things pass you by. And this sense of urgency or get things done or grind culture. And that's really so challenging too, because that's real. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, but stress kills. It like legitimately kills people, and it kills BIPOC bodies at a faster rate.
Yes.
And I so that's sort of like when I'm telling people like this isn't, it's not just taking a nap. It's saving and surviving our whole culture. Like we can feel the energy when other BIPOC bodies are resting. When I'm teaching BIPOC bodies, the ancestors are coming in and hanging out, and then they're sharing that energy with other BIPOC bodies. It's like the most incredible healing power that there is, without people doing much, but me being with them within breath, love, and pillows. Right? Like the ripple effect is
Yeah.
like profound. Yeah, so good.
I am just really moved and honored that you are here with me and having this conversation, also with my white body and letting me into, right?
Yeah.
How, the work that you do and the community you have built. Is there anything you're looking forward to in terms of like next project, next, I don't know, thing that's on the horizon, another book?
Yeah, so the third book is being written. I just finished the proposal-ish the other day, so I'm excited about that. And there's a lot of folks doing sort of liberation work, which I think is so amazing and incredible. And I think just through my work of working with all bodies in yoga and somatic healing, and the power of integration with that is sort of what I've sort of coined the phrase of the embodiment of love, right? That we can embody that with each other, even folks that hold that paradigm of white supremacy, right? People think I'm fucking nuts, right? But it's the work that has to be done, and it's the work that I'm particularly feeling called to do, even though I know everyone isn't, and that's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
Because we all have these gifts in which we are shifting and changing the world, particularly right now when it's being called for like real radical response, um, of leaders and teachers. And so, but we got to take care of ourselves. But the way that I can do that is sort of help people to understand within the somatic world, but within yoga, within those spaces, how to sort of navigate that in their nervous system, whether they're white bodied or BIPOC bodied or just marginalized communities, LGBTQIA plus, all of those bodies are, I am able to do that in the space with everyone. And I'm not going to claim to keep people safe because nobody, I'm not that powerful as much as I want to be that powerful, but I can create an container in which it's held with sacredness. So.
Well, I am hoping to do a pilgrimage to come take a class with you sometime in the near
Oh,
future.
sure.
I would love
That'd be
that.
great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with me and with our listeners.
Of course. My
We
pleasure.
will link to your work and some of the other folks you named, like the work out of the NAP ministry and rest of
Yeah.
resistance. And Lamarad Owens. We'll link all of that so folks can check it out and see other BIPOC voices that are out there doing this really beautiful, deep work.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I love
Thank
that.
you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for being with us today. To find out more about today's guest, head to healwithcfte.org/podcast. Follow us on Instagram @OnTraumaAndPower to stay up to date on future episodes. And be sure to like and subscribe to On Trauma and Power wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll see you next time. Take care.